Hello, everybody, and welcome to New Consciousness Review. I'm Miriam Knight, and our guest today is New York Times best-selling author Gregg Braden. Welcome, Gregg. Gregg, it's such a delight to have you with us.
Miriam, I am so happy to be with you on this program today, and I am so honored to be in such good company with so many amazing and brilliant people sharing a powerful message of hope and possibility, and I just can't wait to get into this material today.
I can't either. And I can't imagine that there are too many listeners who don't know about you, but just in case, let me outline your background. Gregg is an internationally renowned pioneer in bridging science and spirituality. Following a successful career as a computer geologist for Phillips Petroleum during the 1970s energy crisis, he worked as a senior computer systems designer with Martin Marietta during the last years of the Cold War. In 1991, he became the first technical operations manager for Cisco Systems, where he led the development of the global support team, assuring the reliability of the Internet in its early days. But his passion lay elsewhere. For over 22 years, Gregg has traveled the world to high mountain villages and remote monasteries to search forgotten texts, hoping to uncover their timeless secrets. Gregg's books have been published in 30 countries, and their common theme is that the key to our future lies in understanding the wisdom of our past. And that really shows in all your work, Gregg, from the Isaiah effect and the divine matrix to the spontaneous healing of belief and fractal time. Is there a reason that these books were released in this order?
Wow, what a really beautiful question and a perfect segue into everything we'll do today. You know, I have to tell you, you're the first person that's ever asked me that question. And the answer is absolutely yes. When I was in the corporations in the 70s and in the 80s, and including the three corporations that you mentioned in the introduction, although each job was very different, there was a common theme that ran through all of them, and that theme is that each of those corporations during that particular time in our history were addressing crises that were unfolding in our world. The energy crisis of the 70s, the Cold War and the nuclear crisis of the 80s, and the information sharing crisis that really became apparent during the first Gulf War in 1990. The crises, the fact of the crises, and the way that we think about our relationship to ourselves, to one another, to our world, and the way we solve our problems, while those factors are important to us today, the way that we go about doing all those things, the thinking, actually stems back a very long time ago, Miriam, and this is the reason for me to look into our past. If anyone's listening to this program today, or everyone who is listening to this program today, then they know that the way we think of ourselves has been powerfully influenced largely through the beliefs of science. And science is a relatively young language. It's only about 300 years old. And my thinking was that before 300 years ago, the people of the world had another kind of understanding, a deeply spiritual yet non-religious understanding of our relationship to the world and one another and solving our problems. And if I could find places least disturbed by the modern world, that their perspectives would be more intact. And that is what has led me onto the journeys into some of the most remote and isolated and beautiful, magnificent, pristine places remaining on the earth today where this wisdom is preserved. So this is a long answer to your short question. It's in those places and in the lives of the people that preserve the wisdom that we find these elements of a deep truth that helps us to remember in the language of the best science of today who we are and how we may apply the wisdom of the past to solve the greatest crises of human history.
Well, that's a perfect segue into your latest book that's coming out this week called Deep Truth. The tagline is Igniting the Memory of Our Origin, History, Destiny, and Fate. So let's begin by asking what you mean by the title.
Well, the title Deep Truth actually is reference to a statement that was made by Nobel Prize winning physicist Niels Bohr in the mid-20th century, Miriam, during a conversation he was having with Albert Einstein. And, when I hear about conversations like this, I wonder if even the people having the conversations know when they make the statement how deep and profound the statement is that they've just said, that they've just made. Because what Niels Bohr said to Albert Einstein, they were talking about the nature of truth, and in this case, scientific truth. And Niels Bohr said, this is a quote, he said, "It is a hallmark of any deep truth that its negation also is a deep truth." So in other words, when we take something, a scientific truth that we have believed and that much of our understanding has been based upon for a number of years or possibly centuries, and new discoveries tell us that truth is no longer true, then the new discovery becomes the new deep truth. And the reason that I chose that as a title for this book is precisely because of that. We, this generation, our time in history, our civilization, are facing the greatest number of crises, and each crisis is of the greatest magnitude of 5,000 years of recorded human history. The best minds of our time are in agreement about this today. What is so significant is that many of the crises are what they are because of the assumptions, the scientific assumptions that our civilization and our lives and our world are based upon for the last 300 years or so. And many of those assumptions now are being proven false by new discoveries on the one hand. That's the good news. But there's a reluctance in mainstream science, mainstream documentaries, mainstream classrooms, mainstream textbooks. There's a reluctance to share these new discoveries. So my question as I began writing this book, and the reason I wrote the book, is how can we possibly solve the greatest questions of our survival until we know the deepest truths of our existence? And how can we possibly arrive at those truths if the new discoveries are not being shared in meaningful, responsible public ways today? That's the reason I've written this book.
You go into a number of the crises that are facing us. You enumerate 5 crisis areas that are actually threatening our future. Are we already at a tipping point, do you think?
Well, we are, and I'd like to say to our listeners, there was a time in my life when I had an aversion to the word crisis. I used to, and especially when I was in the corporations, and I would come onto a project such as during the Cold War, the Peacekeeper missile project was designed because of the crisis, the nuclear crisis between the former Soviet Union and the United States. But I have changed that perspective, and I now appreciate the word crisis for this reason. If a crisis is still present, it means we still have time to do something. It means it's not over yet. When the crisis is no longer existent, it means that something has already happened. It may be good, it may be not so good. The fact that the best minds of our time, these are the scientists, the religious leaders, the social architects, the engineers, the spiritual leaders, the philosophers of our time, are telling us in very clear terms that we are in fact facing the greatest crises of 5,000 years of recorded human history. There was an amazing edition of the journal Scientific American, a special edition, that was released in September of 2005. It's online today for people that would like to see this. And the title of this special edition tells the whole story. The title is Crossroads for Planet Earth. Crossroads for Planet Earth. And while many of our listeners in our genre that we're reaching today, many of us have known for many years that Earth is at a crossroads, this special edition was important because it was the scientific community acknowledging in scientific terms what it is that many of us have known and suspected for many, many years, that we are at this turning point. And this is where I make the distinction between destiny and fate. People say, well, where do we go from here? And they cite many of the ancient and indigenous prophecies as a roadmap in terms of what we can expect over the next few years. what we know is this, is that when we talk about fate, we as individuals, our communities, our nation, our planet, we are on a trajectory right now based upon the choices that we've made in the past. And that trajectory will lead us to a very certain outcome if we do nothing to change it. The trajectory is what is carrying us into the breakdown of unsustainable ways of living and the great changes that we're seeing in the world, whether it's the economic collapse of global economies or whether it is the crisis in terms of available food and available fresh water and our ability to distribute medicines and the famine that's occurring in parts of the world right now, or other things. That we know that these crises are happening right now. If we do nothing, that is our fate. Our destiny is what is available to us if we make the choices based upon new information that change that trajectory. And one of the reasons this is so fascinating to me is I think of the space program a lot when we talk about these as an example. When our scientists aim a rocket at the moon's a long ways away. And if we make a small change in the trajectory when that rocket leaves the Earth, by the time it gets into space, it translates into a huge distance. We could miss the moon altogether. Mm-hmm. And the same thing, I believe, applies in our lives today. It's not that we have to turn the world around 180 degrees in a heartbeat. It's that the little choices that we make in our lives every day translate into our collective answer to the crises of our time. Little choices that we make in terms of the way we grow our food or the way we think about our economy or share resources based in these assumptions of science. Many of them affect our lives every day. The ability to cooperate or compete, for example. And we'll talk about that more, I'm sure, in this program.
Yeah.
But it's our ability to make these small choices that change our trajectory and take us from the darkest fate of the most frightening prophecies into the depths of what many people believe is human destiny. And that is a destiny of a world of peace, a world of cooperation, where we still have the problems, but we learn to work together to address and transcend the problems, rather than trying to conquer nature and have only a few people who benefit while many others suffer from the solutions. And these are the kinds of choices that we're making on a big scale. And then as we go through the program, we can talk about what that means in our personal lives and the small choices that we make every day.